Just wanted to make a couple of comments. For the record, as to what Mr. Holmes had said, that property was assessed at about $700,000. The city lost $500 that could have been used as matching grant money. But the other thing is, I would recommend that the commission definitely give Mr. Corky 2.5 years. I don't think that that's a stretch at all. I would also suggest that you table the rest of this issue concerning the letter of credit until Mr. Holmes and perhaps the mayor can look at, paragraph 27.3 about the protection of the seller, where it talks about what Mr. Diamond was referring to, and make sure that it's ironclad that there must be a letter of credit. The other thing would be Mr. Holmes' reference, and I didn't write that part down, something about the cost of the remaining part of the project. There's no, apparently it's anything from $500,000 to $1.5 million or something that might be done, and that would have to do with the letter of credit. So if you would table the financial part maybe for 2 weeks, I know it's 2 weeks, but I think it would give you all time to look into that and maybe give Mr. Diamond time to get more solid figures as to what the actual remaining cost might be, which might help him know and you know what the amount of the letter of credit should be. So I would just recommend that you table the financial part and go ahead and grant the 2.5-year extension. I don't think 2.5 years is that much of a stretch. Thank you.
Mr. Rayburn.
Andrew Raven, 500 Mosley Avenue, Palatka, Florida. I'm going to speak from personal experience. I do not know Mr. Diamond, but I have done enough construction projects at Microsoft that we did not do a letter of credit one time, and the contractor racked up $5 million of supplies and then left, and we had to cover it out of our money. So letter of credits are good. They are not complicated, but we do need to know exactly what the plans are going to be to know what amount the credit needs to be. Thank you.
Any comments from the commission?
Is there any way for us?
You're done with comments.
I didn't know if there's any more.
No, you're good. You're done.
Is there any way for us to look at what the balance of that project would be, or what might be incurred with that project, and see if it's something we can figure out? We've been a long time trying to really get downtown developed, and I think all of us want to see it develop, but we got to do it with some protection to the city. And for every problem we have, if we can work it out, there is a viable solution on the middle of the road that we can do. The mayor's in the law and the figures. He counts money really well. And and city manager. And I'd like to see if you all could sit down and see if it was a middle of the road or some way for us to work out and get those properties up to par so that our downtown can move forward.
Any other comments from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, I guess one of the things that I first of all want to state, I want to see the project done. That's, I'm not against the project, and I don't know why individuals think that, when you sign a contract, you expect it. And if I sign a contract, I'm expected to abide by the contract. And if I have a problem with the contract, I'm to go to the individuals that are binding me to the contract and say what my issues are, and ask for an amendment or what have you. And he's done that. Now, when I go, that doesn't say that the amendment's going to be granted. It says that I've made the request and hoping that that they're willing to consider it. Now, next thing is I'm not questioning, as was brought up earlier, the quality of the work. That's not what we're talking about at all. The quality of the work, what he did with the environmental center, I agree, it's impeccable work. But one of the things that I'm not willing to do is to give up the protection that the city has. And I think we ought to understand what the amount of protection that the city actually needs based on the plans that's submitted. Now, the plans that has been submitted are the plans for the high condo. It is not the plans for the student. And I think that we need to submit those plans and work off of those plans rather than the plans that were submitted way back in the beginning of the project. So,
Mr. Norwood,
No, no,
those-
no,
Those
no.
plans are updated, and
No.
they're for the building today
no,
as it is.
no,
Just so
and,
you know.
no, and if we've got a set of plans for the, for the students, Thad Crow, do we have a set of plans for what was recommended here tonight, the change that was asking for tonight?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
Okay, so,
They're structural plans.
so, so we need to get a copy of those plans so that we can determine the amount of credit that the city needs and for protection.
Any other comments? I think, I'll make a comment. I think that, the idea of student housing downtown is an excellent idea. I'm a fan of SCAD. I think that there's an absolute need for housing for St. John's. I sit on the foundation board in a whole different capacity, but there is no housing for students in this community at a certain level. I also think that, I think we got an obligation to work with Corky to some extent. But Corky also has an obligation to work with the city, because again, you're under the benefit of the bargain when you sign a contract. And that contract is one that was signed by two different parties. I'm hoping that you had counsel advise you. If you didn't, you should have. And so the contract was negotiated, it was signed, it was a mutual agreement between two people. It was consideration given in the purpose of that contract, and you're bound by what you deal with. Where we are today is at a different point. Typically, once you sign it, you're in it. You're stuck to it. I think that in trying to work with you, the city could have easily stopped you a long time ago, because they could have easily asked for a letter of credit from the first day you started working, based on the language that I'm looking in this contract. So I think the city has worked with you to an extent. But I also think that there's an opportunity for there to be dialogue, a give and take dialogue. But you have to be willing to take just as much as you give it. The fact that you're into a project that you've already agreed to, that's fine. But I think there has to be some additional dialogue made. And there has to be some concessions made if you want to get to some point where there's some ground. And what my suggestion is to the commission is that we gain that additional pertinent information, including having someone look at a final set of plans, not a structural set of plans. When we look at a final set of plans, make an assessment as to what the real numbers are on this project, where we can come back and make an assessment with all information in place, not some speculative project as to where we are. And that conversation needs to be needs to be one had with the building official, the city attorney, let the city manager and the city attorney lead that conversation and decide who needs to be at the table for the city. And that's outside the scope of what I'm here for. I think that conversation needs to be one that gets a fact-finding situation, and it's one, if we see if there's any options that are available, we bring it back a date certain in 2 weeks, and we start to have additional dialogue. The reality of the situation is, we want you to finish the project. The city doesn't, this commission, based upon what I'm hearing tonight, does not want to stop you from finishing this project. We think the project is going to be good for Palatka. But what we do want you to do is honor your commitment. And that commitment, to me, was made prior to my coming, but it was made on August 1st of 2013, based on what's on the front of your book. And so, here we are, some 2.5 years later, doing something totally different. We're calling an audible in the middle of the game, but we don't want either side. But you only want one side to be able to get an audible. So I think there has to be some conversation to see if there's a middle ground or there's any ground at this point. But you got to understand, once you sign a contract and you enter into that contract in good faith, then you're only expected to do what you said you're going to do at all stages of the game. And so, again, my suggestion is that we gain some additional information and we allow for some dialogue over these next 2 weeks to see if there's a recommendation that can come back that can be beneficial to everybody. The city needs protection. You need some relief, obviously, because you wouldn't be here having this conversation about not getting a letter of credit on this particular piece of project. And so, let's see if we can find some way that you can gain some relief and the city can continue to have some protection as it relates to this project. If that can't happen, then we'll go from there and we'll determine what needs to be done. But I think that needs to be the conversation. And if the two parties can't get together and have a conversation, then you can never have a partnership. So I suggest that we come together and have a conversation about some middle ground so that there is protection for the city and you get relief. And so that this project can get done and we can move forward. And so I don't, that conversation can take place when we finish, But at this point, that's kind of where I am. We've belabored this point, and I think that, you know, we need to do something tonight,
Could I have direct communication with Mr. Holmes?
anytime you want.
Is that okay with Mr. Holmes?
Sure. Mr. Mayor, I move that we take your recommendation and move it forward to where we do a fact-finding mission for a couple of weeks and have some city attorney, city manager, whoever else he designates, to have some dialogue with Mr. Diamond during that period.
Second that motion. And I, you know, if you get into it and you need some extended time, because it's down, that we looked at to make sure.
I don't think I don't think based on what we've heard that there's a problem with
Yeah.
that portion
Can we
of it.
make sure with that recommendation that the city manager is a part of it? Because I think, again, we're dealing with some leftover baggage that came, again, before us. And we just want to make sure that all.
He's part of
My
it.
recommendation is that he leads it.
He leads it.
Okay.
There you go.
I just
That's
wanna
the
make sure-
motion.
I just want to make sure that it,
Is there any other
Other question, calling question.
questions called? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 7 on the agenda, resolution authorizing execution of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development conciliation agreement, voluntary compliance agreement between the city of Palatka and Palatka Housing Authority, FHEO, case number 04150430, 804150430-6.
A resolution of the City of Palatka, Florida, authorizing execution of a U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Conciliation Agreement, voluntary compliance agreement between City of Palatka and Palatka Housing Authority, FHEO case number 04-15-0430-8, 04-15-0430-6.
So moved.
Second.
Motion on the floor in a second.
Question.
No.
We open the floor for public hearing. Is there anyone here for public hearing? Seeing no one, we'll close public hearing.
Question.
Question's been called.
That's,
He closed
no
it.
public, close to public hearing, not commission.
Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Oh.
Did we check to make sure that we concur with the added language that was added to this that we were unaware of?
It was actually modified, and yes, we reviewed it earlier this week. I reread every word of it again today to make sure that we made some modifications earlier in the week, that they were in fact adopted. And what the version I reviewed was the one that Ed Burke sent today. I did, and that's what I looked at. So assuming the version that Ed Burke sent today is what you got, then yes, we have.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
what I
the one I reviewed.
distributed right before the meeting
all right.
and emailed.
Okay.
That's the version I reviewed.
Question?
Questions called? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item 8 of the agenda, an ordinance extending the 2008 Economic Recovery and Incentive Program, suspending collection of certain impact fees through December 31st, 2017, second reading.
An ordinance of the City of Palatka, Florida, amending City of Palatka Ordinance Number 08-20, the City of Palatka 2008 Economic Recovery and Incentive Program, extending the suspension of collection of the city's parks and recreation facilities impact fees, fire rescue impact fees, road impact fees, and law enforcement impact fees for a period not to exceed 2 years, providing for notice of impact fee rates upon expiration of the suspension period, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
So moved.
So motion on the floor in a second. We're now open the floor for public hearing. Is there anyone here for public hearing? Seeing no one, we'll close public hearing.
Question.
Questions been called? Any discussion from the commission? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item number 9 in the agenda, ordinance amending chapter 50, article 3 of the Code of Ordinances to amend various elements, special events ordinance. Second reading.
Ordinance of the City of Palatka, Florida, amending Palatka Municipal Code, Chapter 50, Article 3, special events to revise meeting timeframes, exempt permit fees for free events open to the public and reduced notice area for Class A and B events, providing for severability and providing effective date.
So moved.
Second.
Excuse me. We'll now open the public hearing. Is anyone here for public hearing? Seeing no one, we'll close public hearing. Is there any discussion from the commission? Question's been called. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item 10 of the agenda, ordinance amending subpart. Let's pull, I'm sorry. Item number 11 on the agenda, Munico agreement for combined utility building.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, that's an agreement between the city of Palatka and the Palatka Gas Authority on the combined billing. They're going to enter into, Mr. Nelson and Mr. Kittner, correct me if I'm wrong, enter into a 3-year agreement with Munico to provide the billing services for both the Palatka Gas Authority as well as the Water Department for the city of Palatka. And this is our agreement that we will work in partnership with the Palatka Gas Authority for the next 3 years.
I would like for you to also explain, because the question has been asked. If a person is not able to pay both bills at the same time, can they pay the water bill or a gas bill and then come back and pay the other? This is just for billing purposes?
This is for billing purposes, and just for clarification, when you receive your combined billing, you'll have a bill for the Palatka Gas Authority as well as a value on there for the water cost as well. And yes, ma'am, you can pay either or at that time. Yes, ma'am.
And will the water bill still be paid here and the gas bill there?
No, ma'am, it's all going to be combined at one location.
Okay. And they will be notified of the locations in which they should pay that?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
I just want to get it on the air, so.
It'll be at the gas authority.
And we had a press here, so we'll make sure that folks know. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I guess my question would be, have you actually looked at this agreement? I didn't see where you
I don't
signed
even
off
have
on it.
I don't even have it in my packet.
It's nothing in the packet. It's just a mutual agreement. They've got, they've already using, I believe, the organization, and when we're coming on board with them to provide our water service fees for us, or collection fees for us, it was just for us to give them our support, that because they already use a muni code for their billing, that we would just join in with them for the next 3 years to make sure we had the consensus that we're combining those services, that we would still be a partner with them.
And if it doesn't work, then, I mean, if people get to complaining much, then you know that we need to come back and.
It's going to work, right, Don?
I mean, we all are the city, whether it be gas authority or other water department, both are the city. So, I mean, we're all trying to accomplish the same thing. So,
Yeah, this will.
A quick question, without the card, is the combined bill going to be able to be paid online the way the water bill is now?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
It's going to create, well, Mr. Reynolds had started this project prior to my arrival, and the whole purpose of this was to create some efficiency and cost savings for the city to combine with a gas authority on the billing that was already being sent out. And we'll also, if I'm not mistaken, be able to communicate more readily with our citizens of Palatka when we have issues that we need to discuss in open forum.
Any other questions?
One more question. If the billing, if people are paying somewhere other than City Hall, what happens to my 2 ladies that are out there?
Ms. Mayor, we have Ms. Brown, we have a contingency plan in place. I believe one of the young ladies will be moving over to the gas authority to continue that role of representing the city and the water department, and we will find a location for the other one to exist.
Just make sure that those ladies have a job. They've been with us and been faithful for years, and you're not putting nobody out of work. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion? So
Mayor,
moved.
I have a speaker line.
I got you.
so moved. So we do it.
Second.
What's the motion?
That we accept the recommendation from the city manager to combine the water bill and the gas authority bill and be collected by the gas authority.
Ms. Kitchen. I didn't forget you.
Thank you, it's getting late, we're all getting tired. Liquid Kitchens, 1027 South 12th Street, Palatka, Florida. I met with Mr. Reynolds and Mr. Suggs prior to the meeting, and they addressed most of my concerns, which had to do with the employees having employment. I would rather that both employees stay with the city in City Hall rather than going to the gas authority, but at least they'll still have a job. I was very concerned that I would not have the option to pay either the gas or the water bill, given that in 2013, one of my month's water bill, gas bill was $450. And if I didn't have a way to pay it, I certainly would have the gas turned off till I could get it paid and keep my water. So I was very concerned about that. I think it's nice that you want to be cost effective and save some money. I don't think it's best for the citizens. In my preference as a citizen, I would rather that everything stay at City Hall. I am glad to hear though that if you have a problem with your water, you can still go down to the city manager and you can, he'll still, fix whatever the problem is. But I think it would be better if it stayed at City Hall. That's my preference. That's what I would like. I just really don't want to move down to City Hall. To me, it's not going to be, I pay it online, so I have paid it online. The past 2 months, I haven't been able to. There's been something wrong with the system. But I just think it's easier for the citizens to come down to City Hall and pay it. That's why I'd like to have it stay at City Hall. And I think you all have certainly made a pretty good amount of money for the city this year, raising the water bill by 10%, and then the $1.6 million estimated by the fire fee, which you are probably going to get about $800,000. So I don't see where this $18,000 or $20,000 savings is that big of a deal. I would really rather stay at City Hall, and thank you very much.
We appreciate you. Any discussion from the commission? I think that my discussion is it's a lot easier to go to a drive-through and do one-stop shopping than it is to get out your car and go to Kansas City Hall and pay your bill. If you're paying online, there's no difference because it still uses the same computer. So with that being said, we'll call the question. If there's no more discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. City Manager and Administrator reports. Mr. Crowe.
Nothing, sir.
Chief. He got you. Come on.
I don't say, just want to make sure a shameless plug here for the flying that's going to be this weekend out at the airport. Please tell everybody you know, please bring your family. It is a fun day out at the airport. Thanks.
Anything
Now,
else?
the mayor announced it when all the kids were in here, so.
Great, great. And don't be scared by the weather.
Gas Authority. Anything for Gas Authority? Chief Shaw.
Nothing.
Mr. Griffith.
Yes, sir.
I knew you had a town or something.
Oh, yeah, we got tons of stuff here.
This is good news.
Yes.
Yeah, for once. Jonathan Griffin, Project Manager. Earlier this week, the Water Management District Bureau Chief for Project Management, Dale Jenkins, contacted us and notified us that all 3 applications that we submitted for cost share grants ranked high enough for funding. Now the bad news. Unfortunately, he said they want to only fund $500,000 per entity. We submitted for a total of approximately $1.1 million per the 3 projects. You probably are all familiar with the projects, but I'll go through them real quickly. Those 3 are the reuse generator project, which is a $100,000 project to put a generator in for currently the reuse components of our wastewater treatment system. Right now, if we went down and didn't have power, the water would have to go to the river, and Brian wouldn't have the capability of actually tracking or monitoring the loading to the river, which would put us out of compliance with FDEP. So that was our highest priority. That ranked 2nd out of the 3. The other project was the Booker Park Regional Stormwater Pond. That is a pond that would treat 200 acres of an area of the city that's currently not treated. It also would facilitate the clearing of additional recreational land for future recreational amenity development. That project was $496,000, so I can probably all see where this is going. The 3rd project, let me back up for a second. That project ranked number 1 out of the 3. The 3rd project, which ranked number 3, was the South Historic District Stormwater Project. Currently, the stormwater discharges directly into the St. Johns River with no treatment. This project was designed to go in and do inline treatment below ground, so we don't have to build any ponds in the South Historic District, and install a baffle box at the end of the chain and treat that water. It does coincide with some planned improvements to the streetscaping on River Street, which was budgeted for in this year's budget. And we're also, as you know, actively pursuing funding for potable line replacement in that area. So there could be some economies of scale to take advantage of there. That's a $460,000 project. Staff did quickly look at what we have for available funds in the budget. There's not much in better place that could be allocated towards these projects to get us below the $500,000 cap to do maybe 2 projects instead of just 1. There is money in the South TIF, and it is in the CRA plan to make those improvements to the infrastructure. But again, we're here for you tonight because we need some direction, and we actually had to call in a favor to get a delay because they wanted a response as soon as they called. So some direction would be helpful.
Well, we know the sewage treatment plant is critical, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So, and that's top down priority, just that we do it. So where do we go from here, guys? Wastewater plant, we got to do that.
What was it? The first one was 100?
Yes.
What was it?
The first one was $100,000 for the generator.
Three
The
years.
second one was $496,000 was for Booker Park.
Okay.
And the third project was 400.
460.
468.
$468.
Yeah.
What's that third project again?
The third project is the stormwater improvement of the South Historic District. Currently, you have a combination of surface runoff and inlets that discharge directly into the river.
That's your third priority.
That was the third project that was submitted, and it ranked third out of all 3.
Right.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask the city manager and the finance director, $100,000 to keep us with to keep us in compliance, where we're not discharging from the wastewater treatment system to the river without treatment. Not well with treatment, but we actually got the water out of the river now, and it'd be a non-compliance for put water back into the river. Question for you: is there a chance of finding any resources at all for the $100,000 to where we can do 2 of these grants? We can do 2 of these projects rather than just 1.
The original, we would be pulling for the South TIF, we'd be pulling out the CRA funds for that to make the cost share difference. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, and we did show a small match because they won't pay for design somewhere in the $40,000 to $50,000 range that the CRA was going to.
How much were we planning on pulling out? Is probably, what, 40, 50, 60,000, something like that?
You'd have to pull out another $70,000
$70,000?
to make room for the generator project.
So it's either pull 70,000 out of the CRA TIF or see if we can find $100,000 if we want to try to do the Booker Park project as well as the generator project. We would need to try to find the additional funds to cover those costs. Mr. Reynolds, I'm not quite sure what we have left in the budget for the wastewater treatment plant. I know we just allocated probably close to $20,000 for some new pumps that were needing to be purchased that went bad. 30,000. Okay. I would like to say we've got to give them some direction this week as to what it is we would like to do. I don't know how concrete that would be as far as, I think they're going to make some initial comments somewhere around February 9th, I believe it is, on what projects may be funded. If we had any additional time to look and see if we could find an additional money to do the generator in-house, or maybe get some additional USDA funds, we could probably look at that. We're getting funding now, or we're qualified for funding for $1.5 million, I think it is, for the wastewater treatment plant. Or 75, yes, with a $1.5 million request, right. So on the fly, Commissioners, I don't know if we have the funding available, but I tell you, we can look at it and see where we might be able to pull some funds from. I don't know if Better Place has any that we could pull from.
In the utility fund, we did budget the $125,000 for infrastructure. However, we were planning to spend at least over half of that on the infrastructure study that we were working with theirs on. Mr. Suggs also mentioned that we had two pumps go down to the golf course. They were about $15,000 a piece. That was unexpected. So a significant portion of it, and I haven't looked at the entire utility fund budget to see overall where it's at. But that's where that match would need to come from for the generators, since it's for the wastewater treatment plant. So, like Mr. Suggs said, we could take a look at doing that one. The South Historic District does have funds available for the match for that one.
Now,
The Booker Park would have to be Better Place, and I can't say with any confidence it's a Better Place. That's
follow it.
match that grant.
Matt, for the South Historic District, they did have additional funds when we went over the budget, during the budget time period, around October, November time period. They had additional funds that needed to be spent correctly.
South Historic District has several $100,000. I don't have to look at the budget. I believe it's close to $300,000.
One thing that we haven't done, and we tried very diligently not to do this year, is when we created the budget for you folks this year, we did so without doing anything with reserves. That was a very serious consideration this year, given the fact that our reserves are somewhere around the $800,000 level. You know, it's a tough call to make without knowing where we're going to be in the next 3 to 6 months. But if it was the Commission's will to have us look and see where we may be as far as $75,000 or so needed to be able to do 2 of the projects, including the generator, we know that we do have those funds available to us in emergency need. Now, where are we financially today? I know we've saved $60,000 on a DOC contract that was taken care of this year. We're doing all that we can to be efficient in other areas of our general fund budget. I think we may have the opportunity to be able to do this with the understanding that if we fall a few dollars short with where we're at today, we may need to request a budget amendment from the commissioners to move a little bit of money to cover those projects. I think all the projects are very worthwhile. I think it's a step in the right direction, and the one thing I want us all to understand is we were tasked with going out and looking for grants. I think staff has done an excellent job of seeking grants, and unfortunately we've been approved, I guess is the term, but it's a great problem to have, and I think that we're in a position to where we can do some things moving forward, but it's going to have to take faith in order to be able to get us there, and I don't know if we can do that.
I think what I'm hearing is there's an opportunity for additional funding sources to get the generator done, and I would rather see us get the $500,000, 496 on the Palatka project, and then seek our additional funding sources. I know we've had this conversation as well with the fire department during our visioning sessions about opportunities that may be present for us to get the generator. So I think there are some other options out there. So I think that we need to look at the larger project.
Well, one of the things that I'm not in favor of, I mean, we went through a lot in order to put in a system to build our reserves. This is not an emergency. That's first thing. You know, this is an opportunity we have to probably correct some things that needs to be corrected. But I will state again, it's not an emergency. But one of the things that could put us in an emergency situation if we lost pumps and that kind of thing and water would be discharged to the river. And I think one of the things that we have to maintain is compliance. You know, I do not want to see the city get up on a moratorium, because we did not, we did a risk assessment, but we did not mitigate the risk that was there. But also, I think that there's an opportunity as well, through the water management as well as the DEP, to get some of the stormwater projects done. But also, I'd like to at least try to do 2 of the projects and also tap into those resources that may be available at water management and DEP, if any resources are available. And I think because we do have some resources within the South TIF district, we may be able to do the wastewater project as well as the stormwater project within the South Historic District, and the Booker Park project. We would look for resources from the water management as well as the FDEP, if there are any grants available for those.
There's another cycle opening up with the Water Management District. They haven't advertised it yet. The only difference will be is there won't be a specific pot of money set aside for ready communities. This cycle had approximately $5, maybe more, $1 million set aside for ready communities because they wanted to distribute those funds. So if we were to submit an application under the next cycle, it probably wouldn't be as competitive.
Okay, let me also give the reason for choosing for my choice of the South Historic District stormwater system. There are people that are living in that area, and because there's a lot of traffic in that area, there's a lot of different types of pollutants that's in that stormwater that won't be filtered going to the river. We're currently using Booker Park, that drainage system there, as a filtering system prior to getting it to the river. So I think the chance to take out more pollutants is within the South Historic District rather than Booker Park at this time. That's a project that's needed, but I think we have to pick. I'm picking what I'm considering the greatest benefit.
Well, Matt, you know, we're going to Tallahassee to the lobby. While we're there, we might be able to see if we can find some other resources to bring back. So if we can get there and come back next week, we can pass stuff on if we find something to city manager to see if there's anything available. So I'd like to see us maybe hit the ground running and check with some of the people we need to check with in Tallahassee to see what's available for us. We might get lucky.
In the meantime, we gotta make a decision.
Yeah, if we don't give them any direction, we're just going to fund the highest ranked project, which would be Booker Park, and then we'll be able to go any further than that.
I think that opportunity may not be there again in the same light. So I'm pushing for Booker, and we need some direction tonight.
Well, are we gonna be able to make it with the sewage treatment plant?
It's 30 years.
It's ranked third, yes, sir.
It's the highest ranking project. I think it puts us in a position where we got the most assurance that we're going to get the funding from that one.
If you're going to go with that project, I'd at least say, give some commitment that we're going to put something towards it, because it might be that we identify even $40,000 or $50,000 that could be thrown at the Booker Park project, so that they at least send us a contract for the generator project. I mean, we don't know where the chips will fall and what funds will be available in different funds, and as you know, we can't transfer from the general to the utility, so I would at least leave that possibility open. It's just my recommendation.
Okay.
If you go with Booker.
Mr. Mayor, I will reconsider, just because Booker Park is the highest ranking and has the most possibility of being funded. But it's not my choice.
That's pretty
What's the
good.
thought? What's the direction for the commission?
I say Booker, if we want to pick one or two. If we got two, reuse and Booker.
So I'm gonna say a bird in the hand better than one in the bush, but I would like for us maybe when we go to Tallahassee to see if we can look for some other resources and go for it and go with our first choice with that.
Commissioner Campbell?
last statement or
So let's see what we can do with Booker and the generator.
Yeah.
So it's the rankings that came out, 1, 2, and 3, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, the rankings were Booker, generator, South Historic.
Okay. Are we all fine with moving forward based on the
In
rankings?
that order.
That's fine.
One other thing before we move off of Mr. Jonathan's presentation here, the meeting to discuss the funding, I believe, is going to be February 9th, down around Palm Coast, I think it is.
Pompey.
Palm Bay, I'm sorry. A little further south, a little further south. If February 8th is a CRA meeting, we're going to check the agenda when these decisions are being made on the 9th. If at all possible, we met with the Water Management District folks last week here at the office about some other projects, and I think it would be a good idea for some of us to attend, whether myself or Mr. Jonathan, to drive down either the evening of the 8th, depending on the schedule, or the 9th, to sit in front of these folks and thank them personally for what they're doing for the ready communities, and then lobby again for the next cycle of what they can do again, even though it's not going to be for a ready community, but what they may want to change their criteria to assist us ready communities. And that was some direction I was given by the Water Management District folks, that it might be very helpful for us to do that. And I think
what's
they
the
need
date
to.
on that?
February 9th.
If there's a,
The 8th is a CRA meeting, the 9th is the meeting for the grants. Unfortunately, it's a 4-hour ride from here, so we need to check the schedule of the 9th.
February 9th,
Yes.
CRA.
Anything else, Mr. Griffin?
Just wanted to state that the hotel's actually moving along pretty quickly now. They've got their structures installed for stormwater. The 4th floor has all the tile, carpet, wallpaper up. They're moving into the 3rd floor now. They're going to start laying stormwater pipe and start installing the exterior brick probably in the next week or so. Still not sure if they're on track to be opened by the Bassmaster Elite, but they have expedited some of their work items, so that is promising. That's all.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Mr. Reynolds?
Nothing, sir.
Mr. Triggers? Mr. Holmes?
Nothing.
Commissioner Borum?
Nothing.
Mr. Campbell? Mr. Norwood?
We just wanted to kind of remind the commission that, we talked about a paving project that's out in Crystal Cove, that those are high-end homes, and we need to make sure that we protect our tax base out there as well. And we know there's been a couple of months since we had that discussion. And I think every time I see Mr. Suggs, I'm asking about funding for it, and I just want to make sure that we keep that in the forefront, because I think we really do need to correct those issues within that community.
Okay. Can we include something in the report next, can you get with Commissioner Norwood and maybe send an email out to all of us of what there are some available options? Or at least do a cost analysis.
And
Let's just do a cost analysis and send that out, so we'll have that information, and then we can go from there. If it's something we need to put on the agenda, then we'll do it.
but are we scheduled to put the CRA on the restructuring of the CRA on the agenda anytime soon?
That was coming up in the next discussion, I think,
Okay.
the next meeting.
Okay.
That was what we discussed, that being a part of the next strategic planning meeting. Vice Mayor Brown.
I talked to Father Bob Marsh, who is the pastor at the Episcopal Church, and he has talked to Mr. Robert Lee, who was one of the people who started the business incubator in Jacksonville, Beaver Street. He said that he is very excited about us wanting to do one over here, and he wants to send the guy over that helped them put their business incubator together. I'd like to get permission from you all to continue to talk with him, and when he gets back with me about setting up a meeting, get to the city manager so he can get you all, and we can at least see if we can get that help that they want to give us, if that's all right. Speak up, fella. Come
No
on.
objection from me.
Hey,
All right.
that's part of one of the priorities,
Yes,
so
it's one of our priorities.
we
All
keep it
right.
moving forward.
All right, and as soon as I hear back from him, he said that the guy that set this up is still trying to get him to come over and sit down with us. I'd like to see suggestion box sit up in each one of our departments, and if somebody comes up with an idea that's gonna save the city money, then look at those ideas, and if, according to what they save for the city, that we give them recognition and a check. I'd like to pass that on to you all, to pass on to the city manager. Those people work out there for us, and they know better how to do the job than we do. The other thing is, I'm really wanting to do something, it's not our priority for us, but if you ever let me, I really want to see our housing get to our people who work for us. If you all would mind that I have a few meetings to see if they want to do it or not, and come back and let you all know, and then we get a strategy going, I'd like to do that, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay? All right, that's all.
Nothing from me, we're adjourned.
Oh.
Oh, I